Don't know. Story time? Oh yeah, it's gonna be a good story. Come on. There's been a video today, not today, this week, released called MVM's Most Hated Weapon by WeezyTF2. And we'll go look at that. Piece by piece. I'll tell you what the problem is with it. Piece by piece. So, yeah.
The Gas Passer in Man vs. Machine is the most hated weapon in the history of TF2.
Pretty true.
Now I can already hear you thinking, but what about the Dead Ringer, the Scorch Shot, the Danger Shield, the Wrangler, the Diamondback, the Old Flog, the New Flog? All of them pale in comparison to the uncontested champion of bottling up vitriol and selling it on the street corner.
I don't know how the Diamondback and fucking Darwin's Danger Shield go in there, you know. But, okay.
A lot of
really
people
related to MVM.
really do not like this weapon. But why is that? Well, I've stumbled through the chaos of many high tour communities, and if you look past the minor optical failings, there
Hi, Harold.
are some actually salient points to address. I invite you all to discuss in the comments below, just don't be a dick. I know that's a big ask for the MVM community, but try your best. With that out of the way, this is why MVM players hate the Gas Passer. On its own, the Gas Passer is the same shit stain of a weapon that it usually is. It takes 750 damage to fill while passively generating over the course of a minute. All of this for the benefit of 5 seconds of area denial. Normally this cloud is about as deadly as the mist setting on your garden hose, but in MVM, one little upgrade turns that shit into mustard gas. This is Explode on Ignite. Just 400 credits gives your lingering, massive AoE secondary burst damage higher than a crit rocket. You see all the shit up here? Pyro can one-shot all of this. Consistently, by the way. The funny thing is that when Jungle Inferno first dropped, the gas was able to restore its charge from the explosion itself. Think crit on kill for Demo Night, but with the range of Girardi. This was obviously a balanced nightmare, so Valve tossed the explosion charge and called it a day. But as we're all aware, there are 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and Valve never doing enough to solve the problem. For a non-upgraded Pyro, 750 damage only amounts to 5 seconds of uninterrupted DPS. With max damage upgrades, this number is lower to 2 seconds. And with crits, which you often get with Pyro's 2 best flamethrowers, gas charges in less than a second.
That's totally not a problem, right? Just on the math. That's fine, I guess. Said nobody ever.
And that's not even taking into account passive regen, which, for some reason, has a fucking recharge upgrade. Every tank, every giant, every goddamn sentry buster is a gas battery just waiting to be charged. It doesn't matter if you're dead. It doesn't matter if you're looking 180 degrees away from the mobs. And it doesn't even matter if the robots hold a weapon specifically designed to be resistant to range damage, you're getting that 350. I mean, is there a single item in the game that you can throw on the ground, take a teleporter back to spawn to buy upgrades, and come back to find that you've decimated the entire cluster? This is broken. Pyro never needed this. He already had great damage to giants, superb tank busting abilities, and adequate, albeit risky, crowd control. But now the gas has created a situation where Pyro hogs all the hit sounds for himself. This becomes particularly noticeable with robot heavies and bannered soldiers, as their high health pools and damage output often force some kind of oh shit mechanic. Be it a medic's ubercharge, a medic's shield, some kind of canteen, you know, abilities that were designed to be powerful at the cost of their spam ability. Mostly. And we can't rule out that maybe this was Valve's intention. to have the gas passer act as one of those oh shit mechanics. That did not happen. Instead, the gas passer completely threw that power for accessibility trade-off out the fucking window, and as a result made any decent pyro the equivalent of a difficulty setting when dealing with any non-giant robots. And that's just on 2 cities. Think about other missions where medic isn't meta. I know I mainly focus on 2 cities with this channel because that's what the vast majority of people care about, including myself, but I have to mention just how hard this trivializes Mecha Engine. 2 out of the 3 missions are played on this map, Big Rock. You know where all the robots spawn from? Here. This tiny little corridor is where all of this spawns from. It's balanced out by the quantity of robots being much higher, but the gas passer doesn't care. Pyro only dominates even more. So at this point, I believe I've made a strong argument condemning the gas passer from a balancing and design perspective. People will often point to other cases like the Beggar's Bazooka, the Scottish Resistance, and explosive headshots.
So far, it's all on point, and you could just fucking end it right here. But the difference between like all of these weapons, and I wouldn't even necessarily put explosive headshots just here on its own. I would just, I mean, it's strong, right? But explosive headshots on a Sidley Sniper or on a fucking classic is a joke. So in and of itself, it's more the Hitman's Heatmaker that's severely broken just because you can consecutively just shoot, you know. But the difference between all of these weapons and the gas pass is pretty simple, right? The gas pass, you just throw it. And that's all the input you need to be successful with it. Because you don't need to trigger it, someone else can do that. So just imagine the beggars, the soldier looking at a robot. He's not even shooting. But then there's this needle medic who shoots the robots. And just because the soldier was looking at them and the medic was shooting them, they all explode. Or the demo man who has like a pile of crit stickies on the floor, then goes AFK for 30 seconds. But as soon as a robot steps on his stickies and the heavy just shoots a bullet at them, you know, the crit sticky just explodes. Same with explosive headshot, basically. You imagine the sniper just looking at a target, and then without even pulling the trigger, they just all explode because the fan scout ran in and hit them. That's basically how the gas passer works. So there's that difference on top of the money investment.
As other textbook OP weapons in MVM. And they are. But the Beggars requires you to actually stand close to the robots to offset its accuracy nerf. The Scottish Resistance requires you to memorize every single robot spawn for every wave for every mission. And you have to communicate with your team's medic and or NG in order to lay down the death traps. And as for explosive headshots, come on. I don't really need to explain the execution.
This right here is broken. And you can say what you want. Fuck the Heatmaker, alright? Fuck it like the Beggars and the fucking Sky Resistance, alright? If you just have to press a button like this without even having the scope out, I mean,
barrier there.
That's like very skillful.
I'm not arguing these abilities aren't overtuned. To argue otherwise would be a silly assertion. It is to say, however, that all of them require some form of risk, game sense, or skill investment in order.
This is fine, Heatmaker is fine, everything here is fine. Yeah, in our dream worlds, I'm sure. Risk, game sense, and skill. Game sense, more like memorization. You don't really need a game sense to know like where stuff comes from. All these weapons are more like, he's talking about 2 cities here, and they're more broken on 2 cities than I would say on custom missions. Simply because 2 cities or any Valve mission has like shit balancing. If it's the map or the mission itself, it's just shit balancing. Too much downtime for the sticky demo to just fucking blast everything. And yeah. The only real thing that's going to be probably coming out of this on top would be explosive headshots, because it's super easy to do that from a distance, even in community missions, which are designed to be much more difficult and more balanced, I would say. Not all of them, obviously, but you know.
In order to actually
You'll never see a Scourge Resistance demo and community stuff because there's not enough time to set that up or remember all the community missions to begin with. So I would say that's not as broken. Canteens are more broken than that.
perform well, and this also coincides with a massive credit dump on the part of the player. What does a pyro using the gas passer have to learn in order to abuse the mechanic? Nothing. In fact, it serves as one big counter to Pyro's only real weakness in MBM, stubby range. The one thing Pyro players actually had to get good at navigating so they don't die 9 times in one wave has been completely negated. And all of this comes in the form of a 400 credit, lingering AoE, 0 skill investment, safe to use secondary on a class that already had everything, but a player base so rife with clowns that almost no one could make it work. And yeah, we need to talk about that. For some of you, that answer might suffice as to why the gas passer is hated, but for many of you, that question is still left unanswered. Okay, so the gas passer is overpowered. So what? I used the metal blades, didn't you?
The metal blades. I don't play any Mega Man, but the difference between Mega Man and this, same example with casual
This isn't
right
a
here.
PvP game mode where someone has to suffer for another player to get their dopamine hit.
Exactly. No other player has to suffer to get the dopamine hit. In like casual, you have to suffer, or someone else has to suffer. In co-op game modes, you get to have the fun, while the other people don't get to have the fun. In a single player game like Mega Man, it doesn't really matter how fucking busted something is, right? The enemy is not gonna give a shit. And you could argue that the robots don't give a shit that they get exploded in fucking a gas cloud or whatever, but there's still 5 other players who might care.
But PvE balance does matter. I can't be the only one who's felt alienated from games like Warcraft or Pokemon due to their neutered progression systems. But in the context of MVM, this doesn't hold up.
So keep that in mind, alright? PvE balance matters.
Players would experience kick after kick after kick for not using optimal loadouts or proper upgrades. And I assumed this was done to promote a bare minimum standard of competency amongst the player base. So now that the gas passer's in the game, why do high tours feel so differently? Well, here's the kicker. They don't.
Not all of them, at least.
If you have any experience with the MVM community, you may have noticed that, on average, gas passer acceptance decreases as one's tour count grows.
Very debatable. I mean, there's people who don't give a shit, and then there's people who give a shit. So that's just a nice chart, and doesn't really hold up in real life.
On the surface, this seems kind of strange. High tours are viewed as these meta-slaving basement dwellers who shit on newbies for not using what's viable. The gas passer is overtly viable, so why the big disconnect? It all comes down to one word: stakes. Take a new player to MVM. What is his desired goal? To complete the mission. Simple, right? Well, what about someone with 10 tours? At this point, a 2 cities player will have finished 40 missions. Just completing it has become trivial.
Very, very debatable right here, okay? 10 tours in 2 cities pretty much means fucking nothing, okay? And a 10 tour player has still the same goal as a 0 tour player. They want to finish the game, get their shit loot, and then just fucking go on with their life, right? They don't care. They don't just think, oh, this is boring. No fucking way, alright?
So now maybe they shoot for games with no wave losses. Once that becomes trivial, maybe they strive for no strong pushbacks on the part of the robots. But at a certain point, you reach a brick wall where all the in-game mechanics that determine success are routinely conquered. What is an experienced player to focus on now that the basics are no longer stimulating? The answer, of course, is damage. Treating that number as a sort of catch-all measure to judge their own performance opens up a whole new band of progression for these hardcore players.
And the fact that Pyro, that dog shit ass piece of shit brain dead Pyro, can be anywhere close to me on the damage meters is an absolute fucking disgrace.
Damage does matter to some people more than others, but what does it really mean in the end if all you do is just spam canteens and abuse shitty balance? Like, does it really matter that you did 300k damage compared to everyone else just because you spam canteens and one-shot everything? I mean, where's the ability in that? You have memorization, sure, but pressing M1 to put a canteen down or pressing M1 to throw a gas passive, where's the difference?
This next bit may not be too charitable to all the MVM newbies out there, and I'm sorry for that. We were all new and trash at the game at some point, and having a bit of empathy would do the player base some good. I'll get into it soon, but needless to say, I'm nowhere near a fan of Tacobot and their actions. But if I were to tell you that the stereotype of low tour pyros being dipshits didn't hold a shred of legitimacy, I would be lying right to your face.
But why is that the case? Why are the low tour pyros such dipshits, as he calls them? Why?
Despite a gas passer pyro being the only class in the game that can do pretty much everything, a new player insta-locking pyro is met with, let's call it discontent. On average, they suck. And not even in a funny way. Contrary to what people may assume from their experience in casual, an MVM pyro actually has to use their brain. You need to understand where to position yourself and manipulate the robot's aggro so they focus on the team's heavy or wrangled sentry instead of you. If you fail to do this, you will die. A lot. New players typically don't have the best game sense, so low tour pyros die. A lot. And that's not even getting into maneuvers like circle strafing, flog canceling, or proper angles on the tank to double your DPS, all of which are almost never done by new players. The only thing they bother to learn is upgrading Air Blast Force and becoming best friends with the Sentry Buster, or being a health on kill heavy's main source of protein. And why wouldn't they? That's what casual has taught them to do. In MVM, a low tour pyro will almost certainly be a worse player than a low tour heavy or a low tour soldier. But
very debatable, but fair.
That doesn't necessarily mean they'll do less damage. The gas passer has introduced a way for pyro to do absurd DPS from range and one-shot uber medics, all while still having one of the most powerful primary weapons in the game at his disposal. It's no wonder that sniper and demo mains are a tad miffed at this.
Yeah, the sniper mains using the classic.
The gas has made it so that a monkey pyro can outdamage the other classes in a fashion many feel is undeserved. And players don't like that. People don't think it's fair that someone can get good results of using a broken, easy-to-use mechanic. It's why melee players have always been okay with this, but not this. And that's also why Smash 4 sucked ass. The gas has set a precedent that you don't necessarily need to be good at the game to achieve a high damage number, and this undermines that metric as a culmination of one's competency, and therefore makes experienced players' self-imposed goals seem less important. I think we can all agree that the toxicity surrounding the weapon is something we should work to mitigate as best we can. So, how do we do that? Obviously, it'd be ideal if Valve stepped in and nerfed the charge time, explosion damage, or both, or alternatively, they could just axe the explode upgrade altogether and give it a slow effect like the Girardi or the Mad Milk. But Valve would actually need to remove the thumb from their asshole, and we all know that's not happening anytime soon. So again, what do? Well, I'll tell you what we shouldn't do. We shouldn't create dedicated blacklist and smear campaigns for players who decide to make the optimal decision of using the gas passer. In the absence of a fix from the devs that put us in this shithole to begin with, some players have decided to crown themselves judge, jury, and executioner as to what should be accepted. Of the over 4,000 reports on the Tacobot website, almost 1,000 of them relate to a pyro using the gas passer. And while many of them have grown more mellow, and contrary to what what you may believe, you won't be kicked on sight with the vast majority of them. That fact doesn't change what has already been done and what some of their members are still doing. If you're publicly shaming people for making the correct decision by the same standards you were all upholding for years, you're an asshole. That's not to say that everyone who dislikes the gas passer is sympathetic to these actions. I mean, even DeWill, the guy who blew the lid on Tacobot's toxicity to begin with, is himself against the gas passer. But
Blowing the lid is a bit of an overstatement, right?
this should be condemned without question. How can you advocate an efficient, non-intrusive path to victory, but suddenly, when a weapon comes along that's too easy to be effective with, you flip the script entirely? It's very clear that at least a few Tacobot members have a vision as to what they believe the default state of the game should be. So they create this blacklist as a negative reinforcement mechanism to dissuade new players from using the gas passer.
That's probably one of the intentions of it. Probably the main intention back when they started, but I don't know. There's just the stereotype of the gas pyros is just, like he said, the dipshits, okay? The bad. Even with this overpowered weapon, right? They're fucking terrible. I've seen them all. They're terrible. The good ones, they're even more annoying. They make it even more boring. So everyone gets on that list. It's not just the low tools, right? It's also the fucking high tools that abuse their shit. Okay? And the other people that get on the list that nobody ever fucking seems to talk about are the bloody ass cheaters, right? The cheater supporters. And that's something that should also be frowned upon in this game mode. More than anything, I take a gas user over a cheater any part of the fucking day, sure. But we're not going to address that at all. And the things they changed over the years too is they have a whole part on their website. Right, we're just going to go there. Move this out of the way for now. They have a whole part with resources and guides, right? A bunch of guides helping you to play better. Some are better, some are not as good. That's all objectively, but it's the best resource gathering you can probably find. I mean, God forbid you're gonna find a good guide on the Steam fucking section for it. Like, fuck off, right? There's just trash in there. And you have a good collection right here by some of the most proficient players in this game mode as well, so there's no reason to complain about anything, to be honest. They have commendations where they commend people for playing well or whatever. And I don't know. It's not just the bad, okay? It's not just the bad. It's also the good. If we're going by just filters and what do you have? Gas. What's gas? Gas is here. We have 938 results, okay? How many cheaters do we have? 343. How many cheater supporters do we have? What the fuck's that tag? Spread stickies, that's a good one too. Support cheaters, there we go. 434. So in total we have 300 cheaters and 400 people who support cheaters somehow. Like, even giving it the benefit of the doubt, okay? That's still too many people who support cheaters in some way or another. And that should be less acceptable than anything else.
Creating a culture that better suits what they find fun in MVM. But there lies the tremendous hypocrisy. If your own personal enjoyment trumps class optimization, tell that to the hundreds of players you've kicked for wanting to prioritize their own enjoyment over what was best for the team. According to them, you should play efficiently, but not too efficiently.
That's the problem though. Are gas pyros really playing efficiently? I mean, he said it himself. The majority of them are dipshits.
Give me a fucking break. I'm not gonna deny there isn't a valid debate to be had about fun versus efficiency and where the lines are drawn. The baseline assumption is that fun is all that matters. But if your engineer is using the gunslinger or your soldier decides to do some market gardening, I find it very hard to believe that all of you would F2 that boat kick lest you trample on their fun.
I'd F2 it. Hands down. If they don't hold up progress, I mean, fuck around, why not? I don't care.
Despite that realization, we need to understand that drawing a cohesive line that everyone will agree with is borderline impossible. So rather than dwell on that philosophical discussion, I propose a more pragmatic solution. A while back, Soundsmith made a video talking about the relationship between friendlies and tryhards in TF2. To summarize his argument, casual's default state is working with your team, killing other players, capturing objectives, all that good shit. But if over 50% of the server agrees that need not be how that specific game is played, and everyone would just rather conga around the map for 30 minutes while eating sandwiches, the default state of the game has now been changed.
Has it really though? I mean, the game just doesn't suddenly go into pacifist mode and you can't kill anyone anymore. You can still kill people. Sure, you might get kicked for it, but the default state has not changed. It might be an agreement of the players, but that's it.
And new players who join that server should either adapt to the majority or leave. I think
Adapt the majority or leave? Let's keep that in mind.
this relationship translates very nicely over to MVM. The game's default state should be one that encourages choosing the correct upgrades, loadouts, and strategies, yet does not necessitate it to succeed. So, in other words, if someone bitches at a pyro for using what's optimal, that pyro shouldn't have to switch off the gas passer to appease the other player. The pyro is appealing to the default intention of the game, and
So the default intention of the game is, if you have more people that are okay with the gas parcel becomes okay. But what if you have more people that are not okay with the gas parcel? Are you okay to just kick that player? Just remove that person from the game? I mean, the default state has changed at that point, right? Because the majority of players in MVM is not 13, it's 4. Hell, you could even just deadlock games with 3. So, where's the problem there?
therefore, the solution is not for him to change his behavior, but for the one shit-talking him to fuck off. However, I apply this exact same standard to low tours as well. If you're gonna play direct hit soldier or Tommy Slav heavy, that burden you place on yourself from purposefully not doing what's optimal is felt by your entire team, not
A burden from a single weapon. The weapon doesn't make the player. The player is what matters. I could turn a shit weapon into a decent one, but a shit player cannot even turn a good weapon in a decent one. So whether it's a gas pyro who underperforms, or a Tomislav, or a direct hit soldier who's underperforming, there's no difference. They're all underperforming.
just you. It's not everyone else's responsibility to make up for your own intentional handicapping. And if they want to kick you, that doesn't make them meta slaves or toxic tryhards, they just don't want to carry dead weight. This is why I don't personally hate the gas passer. Besides the degenerate gambler in me,
But why? You know? He said it himself, the majority of pyros are dipshits. But he's okay with that somehow now, for some reason?
enjoying speeding up my pull on the world's slowest slot machine lever, if I discourage the use of the gas passer, I can't defend what I believe to be the best philosophy surrounding MVM, striving for competence.
What competence, though? He said it in the beginning in like 5 minutes. He talked about why it's so bad. There's low skill and low effort, and you don't have to do fuck all. How is that competent? If I could just sit across the map, throw the thing, and then someone else triggers it, how does that make me competent? I press the button.
We should not set a default standard of promoting gameplay that intentionally wastes the time of your teammates. The keywords being default standard. Like in the Soundsmith video, if 50% of the team don't want you using gas, or if 50% of the team agree that using a meme loadout is fine, then the default state of the game at that point should be seen as modified, and players can do as they wish.
Players can do as they wish. So we don't have a problem with kicking gas pyros then, right? Because the majority of players were not okay with the gas pyro and they removed them. So there's no problem.
I think that's an approach that's a good compromise for everybody. But back to the original question. Why do MBM players hate the gas passer? Well, because it's overpowered is an incredibly reductive statement. Rather, the gas passer is an injustice of game design. It turns Pyro into a walking contradiction for what constitutes MVM skill progression for a lot of players, and many believe that the game was in a better state before its introduction.
That much is definitely true.
It doesn't encourage new Pyros to play in any more of a strategic way, and only makes actually competent Pyros able to capitalize in what many believe is a unskilled way. That being said, I don't really care.
Then why did you make this 18-minute long video? Hello? Why even talk about the problem if in the end your message is just, you know what? I don't give a shit. I'm gonna use it anyway. You fucking use it. Everybody use it. But fuck the Tacobots because they hate it.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. I have a feeling this video is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way.
You bet your fucking ass it's gonna rub a lot of people the wrong way. You know what the fucking overall message of this video is? Use the gas passer. It's cool. Fuck Tacobot. Okay? The same message Soundsmith made fucking years ago. Devel made fucking blowing the lid on the Tacobot problem or whatever. But, dude, why even make it? Why even make it? It's just gonna be the same fucking shitfest we've already experienced with those other two videos.
I've seen the discussion around this weapon, and it's very, very black and white. If you're pro-gas passer, you're a shitty low-tour player who needs to be carried, and if you're anti-gas passer, you're a fucking toxic elitist Tacobot shill.
That much is true. That definitely is going on. As soon as you hate something, you're a Tacobot now. It's like a fucking stereotype or whatever. I don't know. It's like a new word in the dictionary.
Or whatever it is. Another thing I want to add is I was not expecting to get this many subs this fast. The support that you guys have shown.
But yeah, that's pretty much the end of that. But we're gonna look at some of the lovely comments as well, because there's some great comments on this video of his. I also left a comment, and yeah, that's also what I reflected in my comment. I mean, his description says that gas passer is disastrously balanced weapon that you should use anyway. Here's why. And then we made an 18-minute video about it. That is just disregarded in a single sentence. Alright, cool. So here's what I said. Yeah, I really don't know why you made an 18-minute video explaining a lot of the problems in a lot of detail if the overall statement you sent in the end is summed up by your description. That gas pass is disastrously balanced weapon that you should use anyway. Here's why. It's true that the skill level to use gas is extremely low, and as such, no new player using it is required to actually improve their game in the slightest. An unbalanced weapon is depriving new players coming to MVM of valuable experience to learn the basics, build game sense, and improve themselves. While people who have completely mastered Pyro and MVM can abuse it to the fullest extent, because they have enough of an understanding to fully abuse it. It's an unacceptable weapon on both ends. You're right that nobody who uses Sky Resistance, Beggars, Hitman's Heatmaker, or spams Canteen Minders has any right to complain about the gas passer. I've done away with all of these unbalanced weapons and only ever use canteens on Engineer for the convenience factor. That's my personal statement of how important game balance is. Your default state argument is problematic to say the least. You say as long as the majority of people agree on something, it makes it acceptable. The issue is that the majority of players don't even understand the problem to begin with. So just because the majority, which would be 4 for MVN compared to the 13 in casual, accept the use of something, doesn't necessarily make it acceptable. Hell, you could bring games to a deadlock with just 3 players not agreeing with something. Tacobot problem, I'm sure we can all agree that the methods are not the best to get the message across, but they sure as hell were sending it. I don't agree with the radical approach, but what else were they supposed to do? Like you said, Valve wasn't and isn't doing anything. So as always, the players took it upon themselves to try and address something they found to be an issue. Another thing that everyone seems to just ignore whenever they talk about Tacobot is that they hate on both low and high tools. They also have a zero acceptance tolerance when it comes to playing with cheaters. Something that's also quite accepted by MVM players for some reason. Maybe because it gets them their loot faster. That's the real problem. People playing for loot will never care enough to understand the principle of game balance in PvE. So many players think that gas made Pyro viable. Those same people would have never played Pyro before the release of the gas passer. Those same people would have told you to switch off Pyro because it's a bad class. Why would I listen to anything those kinds of people have to say? So that was my statement.